Hey, what's happening? Today, we are going to cover Lab Exercise 5, Excel Fundamentals Part 1. And Excel Fundamentals Part 1 is all about an introduction to Excel. Excel is what is called spreadsheet software. Basically, you have documents like this that look like a grid of what are called cells, and you can enter different data in the cells and do different sort of operations on it, like math or text altering, things like that. Excel is a very simple but very powerful tool. Pretty much everybody in business uses it, and being proficient with Excel is important for just about everyone in business. So that's why we're doing this. So when you find the Excel application on your computer, go ahead, open it, and one of the options you'll see is to create a blank workbook, right? So if I go to File, you could go to, New, boom, create a blank workbook there, okay? And it should open with this cell A1 already selected. Now, every Excel worksheet is set up as a bunch of columns and a bunch of rows, right? The intersection for each row and column makes a cell, a unique combination, right? So this is cell C5, the intersection of column C and row 5. This is cell H7, the intersection of column H and row 7. Okay, now every cell, again, can hold numbers, can hold text, can hold formulas, can hold functions. And we'll do some of that over the course of this next few lab exercises. Okay, so to change any data in a cell, right now everything's blank. If we want to change that, first you need to select the cell. Okay, right now we have A1 selected. If you want to pick a different cell, just click anywhere on that cell and it'll be highlighted and you can start typing away in it. Da 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 da. Okay, now to select an entire column, you click on a letter like column A, column C, column G, whatever. Just click on the letter, it'll select that entire column. Select on an entire row, select the number for that, right? Even if you're doing that, you're only going to enter data one cell at a time, but sometimes we'll see it is useful to select columns and rows. Another thing you can do is select ranges of cells. If you click in a cell and then move the mouse around while you're holding down the left click button, then you'll select an entire group of cells. For example, here our action is to select the cell range A1 to G8. You can click anywhere in that corner, right? Anywhere in A1 and select down to column, over to column G and down to column 8. You can select G1 and go over to A8 to select that rectangle, or click on G8 and go back up to A1, or click on A8 and go back up to G1 to select that entire range. So whatever that rectangular cell area is that you want to select, you click in any corner of it and then just hold the mouse button down, right? And you can click in, you can select that cell range in any configuration. Okay. Now there's a lot of shortcuts in Excel. All right, so this first thing, that was our first action, select the cell range A1 to G8, but we didn't actually type anything there. That's okay. Now there's a whole bunch of useful shortcuts that are pretty much the same as in most Microsoft applications these days, in a lot of non-Microsoft applications as well. So Control X for cut, Control C for copy, Control V for paste, Control Z for undo, Control Y for redo. So we'll do a few of those. Action 2, enter the text ABC in C5, ABC, okay? And then select it again, right? So you can hit enter, boom, and the cursor will, the highlight selected cell will move down a row. So select it again, and we're gonna do Control B and Control I. Control B for bold, Control I for italics. If you have clicked outside of there, right, select C5 is still selected. So once again, we can select Control C, press Control C, and you'll notice that the border around the cell is moving. Okay, that means it's ready to be copied. So if we select cell E7, for example, and then Control V, we can paste the contents of that cell into E7. Likewise, we can select F9 down here, and once again, Control V, boom, right? We can copy as many times as we like from the original. And if you want to unselect C5, just press the escape key and boom, you'll see that moving border around C5 goes away, meaning it's no longer selected for copying. Okay, there's also cutting, right? So select cell E7 here, right? And then do Control X. Once again, that says, hey, this is the cell you're doing something with. It's ready to be cut. So if we select cell D2, and then Control V, boom, it gets pasted in there, right? But since it's a cut, not a copy, it removes the original data from E7. Okay, you can also do Control A for select all. That usually selects an entire worksheet, although if you're in the middle of a little cluster of data isolated within a worksheet, it might just select that cluster. But you can keep on pressing Control A to eventually get the entire worksheet. Okay, now easy way to clear a worksheet, press the delete key, not the backspace, but the delete key, and boom, all that text goes away. Okay, it's worth mentioning a lot of these shortcuts are designed so you can do numeric data with your right hand on the numeric keypad, and then just do your cutting and copying operations entirely with your left hand. So that's kind of the structure of why things are. Some people feel better about doing it with a mouse, but for me, I like the keyboard shortcuts. So, all right, next stuff we're gonna do is enter some data. Now, if you want to, first thing, there are some alternative methods you can use. You can use the arrow keys, right, to go up, over. You can do that. You can also use tab, the tab key to select, and shift tab to go back, left to right. So there's other ways to navigate around the worksheet besides using the mouse. And sometimes it's a lot easier, a lot faster to use those, use the keyboard. Okay. So let's start in with action 6. We're going to start typing in some data, right? So we'll select cell A1 and using tab and enter keys, enter the following values. So use the tab key to go over to the next column and then use enter when we want to start a new row, right? Like we were using an old-timey typewriter. So A1, last name, B1, first name, C1, sales, D1, zip code, and then enter to go to the next row. And here we have Smith, Jack, 100,000 and 60614. Oh, let's change that formatting, huh? Let's clear it to, there we go. Now everything's where it was. And let's see, A3, Carlson, Sarah, 150,000 and zip code 60201, and then enter for the next row. Bird, Peter, 200,000, 60657, and then the last one, Schwart. Don't worry if you have a typo in here, it's not a big deal. Melissa, 250 and 60614. Okay, so you should have some data like that. Now, if you want to select the cell range A1 to D5, right, of course you could click on A1 or one of the other corners and select that range, right? And that's easy to do with the mouse because the range is small. But if the range was really big with like thousands of rows and hundreds of columns, it would be a big hassle to wait for the screen to scroll through all that, and easy to get it wrong and things, you don't want to do that. So the other easy way you can do, click on one corner and hold Control Shift and then do a down arrow. And you select down to the range of that area. And keeping Control Shift held, press the right arrow, and boom, you select that whole cell range, right? And it works the other way too. You can click on D1 and do Control Shift down and Control Shift left, or you could do D5 and do Control Shift up and Control Shift left. Okay, so that's block selection. It's very useful. Next thing, inserting and deleting columns and rows, right? Sometimes you want to insert and delete columns and rows without changing the rest of the worksheet, right? So one way to do that is to right click, like on a column, and say, insert, boom, you insert a column. You could do that, okay? Another way to do it is, let's see, left of column C, press Alt-I, okay? So Alt and I, and then insert column C for column, okay? That does it. Or if you want to do a row, insert a row above row 5, click on row 5 there, and once again, do Alt-I for insert, but then R for a row to insert a new row, okay? So we'll leave this. Actually, we're going to undo both those things. You could delete them. So I'm going to delete this row. Actually, I'll delete both of them. That row's gone. And then this row also gone. Fine. Okay. So last thing to cover for today is autofill. Autofill is a very simple technique that lets you fill a series of cells with some pre-existing pattern. So let's make a new worksheet. So down here on the plus, right? Down here at the bottom, we do plus, and we've got a new worksheet, right? This sheet is now sheet 2 that we're working in. So suppose you want to fill cells A2 to A501 with the numbers 1 to 500, right? So starting down here, right, fill them in. You could do that by hand, but that'd be very dull and tedious, right? So what you can do instead is just write 1 and 2 in those first two cells, A2 and A3. Then you select them both, And see down here in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little tiny square. And when you hover the cursor over it, it becomes a big white plus. It changes rather from big white plus to a small black plus. You can grab that and roll down, and you'll see there's a little highlighted number that shows you what the next number is going to be. And you could fill it in until that little pop-up number becomes 500. Okay, zoop and scroll back up to find it, and boom, we fill in that range with our series of numbers. So super handy for, filling out with a simple additive pattern. But if you do it with other patterns, and this additive, it actually works with dates because of the way that dates are encoded in Excel. It works with all kinds of relatively oddball things like quarters. You could do like Q1, Q2, and so on. But one of the things that doesn't work well is multiplication. So start with a 2 in B2 and a 4 in B3 and an 8 in C4, right? If you're looking at this as a human, you say, oh, yeah, each one of these is multiplying by 2, right? That should be a pattern that Excel is prepared to handle. But let's go ahead and scroll down, okay? Let's see, we're going to grab this and we're going to pull it down a little bit. And you see now, look, we get a bunch of oddball numbers, right? Because it thinks we're doing some strange addition that doesn't quite make sense. Okay, that's one. Again, if Excel cannot determine a pattern from a range of cells, autofill is generally going to repeat the sequence, right? So in E2, E3, E4, let's do this. We're going to do 3 and 6 and 4, right? And then, oof, select this thing, right? What's it going to do? Once again, pick some weird pattern. Let's undo that. We can do this equals 2 plus 0.5 in E3 like the instructions say, right? And once again, if we select that range, what's going to happen? Some very weird stuff, right? All right. I'm not sure how they come up with this pattern, right? It's a 3 and a 4 and a 2.5 and then a 4 and a 2.5 and a 5 and then a 5. And I don't know what thought process Excel uses to come up with this number, but it's strange, right? So autofill is useful and it does recognize a lot of patterns. For example, let's see, days and months, quarters. So you could do something like, well, let's see here in G2, you could do January and the second one, February, okay? And you can use autofill to extend that. Zoop, and it'll go through and it'll do it correctly. Likewise, if you wanted to, you could do the quarters, right? So you could do abbreviations. So in here, H2, right, we'll do Jan and Feb, okay? And once again, if we do this and we autofill down a ways, it'll repeat the pattern correctly, right? And it works with days of the week as well. But again, if you do abbreviations with the full words, we'll show you what happens, right? Here's J2, J2 type in January, and J3 type in Feb, and we try to do that. Let's see, I am not optimistic here. Look at that. All right, so we got Mar and March, April, May and May, June and June, right? So it really mixes up the things in a weird way. Very strange. I mean, you could see where it happens, right? It says, oh, okay, you want the full name, then the abbreviation. Great. So here you get the full name, then the abbreviation. Here you get, so again, when you're doing patterns like this, best to stick to simple addition, simple sequencing, and don't mix abbreviations and not abbreviations, and you should be fine. All right. Well, I hope this was interesting. This is really basic stuff for those of you who already have proficiency with Excel, but there's a lot of people that don't, so that's why we do this. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.